Oh, what's shaking, HTG crew? What's shaking? A good morning to you as we inch ever so closer to the PGA Championship. Again, mark off that Sunday, the 23rd, on your calendar for the PGA Championship. We're going to do a little alternate broadcast, baby. We're going to be talking some Draftkings sweats, talking, maybe some topics that they don't usually cover on the national broadcast. So mark off the 23rd for the PGA Championship at Kiowa on your calendars. We got an interesting week this week coming into the AT&T Byron Nelson, a much stronger field than I expected to be entered into this field this week, especially, since we're so close to that PGA Championship week. But first, let's go ahead and recap the Wells Fargo. I'm going to spark up before I do that. I am smoking today another joint of the Doc OG. The grower is Cali Gas Pack. It is a hybrid, still testing it at 18.5% THC because, well, it's the same batch. You guessed it. So let's fire this stuff up. Little Scooby snack. Never hurt anyone. All right, the 2021 Wells Fargo. Oh my God. First of all, great event. Secondly, I'm pretty upset with myself for not just like betting Rory McIlroy to win every single week over like the last 4 or 5 events. If you guys, are longer time listeners of the podcast, the episode we did to open the season opener, I did some future awards, some award, predictions, if you will. And I had Rory McIlroy as my player of the year. And my reason being that, Rory hadn't won at that point in time in just over a year, just over 12 months. I figured he would have a chip on his shoulder after the lackluster year that he had last year. And he extended that winless streak past 18 months. So prior to this victory at the Wells Fargo, Rory's last victory was at the WGC HSBC Champions back in 2019. Clearly too talented of a player to go that long without a victory on tour. It was almost certainly going to be a plus EV play if you just started betting him every single event coming into this year, especially seeing the numbers he started landing at. I saw some people with some ridiculous numbers for him at the Wells Fargo, into the 20s, some of those tickets I saw. So congratulations to those who cashed those. But yeah, it makes perfect sense that, Rory McIlroy is not going to go away forever. He's far too talented a player, a future Hall of Famer. And it looks like he's got it back on track just at the right time. PGA Championship again, a couple weeks away. Kiowa, of course, that Rory is certainly going to be live at, especially coming in good form. So, man, the arrow is seriously pointing up for Rory McIlroy, of course, as it should be, coming off of a win. Not all that surprising, too. Another reason why I'm kicking myself a bit, that Rory sort of got his groove back at Quail. Makes sense. A golf course that he's openly, talked about loving. Got his maiden victory on tour at Quail Hollow. So lots of good vibes for Rory around Quail. So an awesome week all around for him. Saw him return to a little bit of form with the putter, and the ball striking was just, it's back to the Rory that we know, right? Just long and straight off the tee, and the iron game was more dialed than we've seen it in quite some time. So love the prospects of Rory moving forward. The guy I did bet to win, Mr. Sung J M, got off to a 3-under start on Thursday. But then those wind conditions that we talked about in the podcast last week, we said Friday the winds were going to get up. You could look to a tee time stack. Well, Friday afternoon was when the winds got up. That afternoon wave that went off on Friday afternoon got absolutely crushed by the golf course. Quail was playing incredibly difficult in those high winds, 17 to 20 mile an hour winds. Yeah, it was ugly for Mr. Sung J M, who fired an 11 over on that Friday round. So just something to keep in mind. I mean, when I do mention these weather stacks, there are some huge advantages sometimes. And if you were playing showdown contests on Friday, rostering all of your players from the early wave tee times was such an advantage. It's stupid. So make sure you keep in mind what role weather could play, and see if there are any ways you can get some advantages, because Friday showdown for last week, I mean, it was like stealing candy from a baby if you stacked all of the AM wave. So just something to keep in mind. Oh, and one more recap for the Wells Fargo before we move on and get into this AT&T Byron Nelson. A big time congratulations and shout out to the boy Nick, listener and follower of the podcast, mixed in some podcast plays with some of his own plays, got his lineup to squeeze through 6 of 6, and took home some big paydays. So congrats to Nick, absolutely crushing it. I know he's going to be playing again this week for the AT&T, so hopefully he tunes in, and hopefully we get back-to-back big winners. So I need to respark this bad boy, and then we get into the AT&T, which, as I mentioned, much stronger field than I was expecting. We're at a new venue. I'm pretty excited for this event, surprisingly. I'm not looking past this one to the PGA Championship like I have been for some of these previous weeks. So pretty excited to get into this event. Alrighty. The 2021 AT&T Byron Nelson. We have left Trinity Forest, thankfully, because that course is kind of trash. Um, and we are now playing at TPC Craig Ranch. It's in McKinney, Texas, par 72, 7,468 yards, bent grass greens, a course that I was unfamiliar with coming into the research this week. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Apparently, it's held a few Corn Ferry Tour events. A course that was built back in 2004, and its owner, that's why it's called TPC Craig Ranch. His last name's Craig. I can't recall his first name right now. But really wanted this venue to hold the PGA Tour event, so he's been asking the PGA Tour, what do I need to make this place look like to hold an event? So down to total distance of the course, distance of the holes, where the parking structure should be, building a hotel next to the damn place. I mean, this guy's done everything to be afforded the opportunity to host a PGA Tour event, and so here we go, TPC Craig Ranch. And looking up the course overview and the gallery, the photo gallery, looks fucking beautiful, to be honest with you. Beautiful looking golf course. Literally looks like you're on a ranch in Texas, which, I mean, it is TPC Craig Ranch in McKinney, Texas. So should play decently long, that 7,468 yards, but everything should be pretty firm this week. So similar to last week when we were in North Carolina and it was playing firm and fast, I don't necessarily think you're going to need driving distance to have success here. With that being said, if you go ahead and take a look at last week's leaderboard, you may think that driving distance did help folks around Quail. So I'm gonna stick to my guns and say that it's still the approach that's really gonna carry the most weight here. Last week, you'll notice even the players that you consider long hitters off the tee, and they are long hitters off the tee like Rory, they still performed really well on approach. And your second place finisher, Abraham Answer, not a long hitter of the golf ball, a great player on approach. So we're going to stick with the model. We're going to stick with the concept that I think on these golf courses, they're playing harder and faster, won't play as long. Strokes gained approach is going to carry the most weight. And even though we didn't necessarily get the results to back that up last week, I still think the decision making was sound. Just running, a little volatility in the game of golf, as I'm sure all of you guys who play it know. So a bad outcome doesn't necessarily mean that you had a bad process or made a bad decision. So I'm actually thinking that our process was good last week, and I think it's going to be similar this week with the course playing hard and fast. Sung Kang's defending his 2019 title, shot 23 under at Trinity Forest, but tournament history we are not going to be leaning on, obviously, because we're at a new venue. So I already mentioned that I'm thinking it's going to set up similarly to Quail last week. Really, over the last 3 weeks, we've had similar golf courses as far as distance and layout are concerned. So another course where We have plenty of par threes in that 200 to 225 yard range, and we have plenty of par fours in that 450 to 500 yard range. The par fives are mostly reachable, as they have been over the last couple of weeks. So I'm seeing a lot of similarities with TPC Craig Ranch, as we've seen over the last couple of weeks. So the player pool is gonna be, it's gonna look pretty familiar. I would say. A lot of these guys have shown up over the last couple of weeks. There are players that are strong on approach. They play these par 4 ranges and par 3 range as well. And I'm also going to include the par 5s this week. We get a full complement of 4 par 5s. All 4 can be reached in 2. So that would be where maybe some of the longer hitters would show up. But I'm going to use strokes gained par 5 because I don't think driving distance gained is necessarily the statistic I want to use. I want to see the guys who just play the par 5s well in general. Don't necessarily need them to be super long. They're still going to be able to reach most of these par 5s in 2 anyway. So the statistical model, we have strokes gained approach, as I mentioned, leading the way. Then par 4s, 400 to 450 yards. Again, we're going to see a lot of those this week. Strokes gained on the par 5s. As I mentioned, we get a full complement of 4 par 5s. We're going to want lots of eagle opportunities at those holes. The par 3s, 200 to 225 yards. And then strokes gained putting, as I mentioned, on bent grass. I always include strokes gained putting. This season, little experiment I'm running, just sprinkle it in. And we have seen some of these really good putters pop. We saw like Brian Gay win an event, right? And that's sort of the reason why I'm continuing the experiment, right? Just to see if I can uncover any of these guys who have a potential to really go under the radar based on how well they've been putting, because so many people look to ball striking, and rightfully so. But if we can zig when other people zag, never necessarily a bad thing, especially if we can get it right. My winner this week comes in the top shelf plays. I feel like our winners have been in the mid shelf here lately, so it's nice to get some high win equity here with a top shelf play winner. So drop in the comments who you think my winner is. Withdrawals this week, DJ Dustin Johnson has withdrawn, so you're obviously not playing him. Was the highest priced player on the slate at $11,400. Now the highest priced player on the slate would be Bryson DeChambeau at $11,200. So if you had DJ in your lineup, get him out. And if you haven't made a lineup yet, obviously you're not clicking Dustin Johnson's name. Okay, so with that, we can get into the top shelf plays. Oh, I should also mention, I mentioned, weather last week playing a big role. If you're going to play weekend tournaments or showdown over the weekend, that's when it looks like the wind's going to kick up this week. Saturday in particular, it looks like the biggest differentials between Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon. So be on the lookout on round 3 showdown. Maybe an advantage to stacking those early tee times. Similarly to Friday of last week. All right. And with that, we're ready to get into our top shelf plays. In total, guys, here, I really narrowed down the player pool this week. Being that we're at a new venue, I really wanted to fade most of the chalk. I think, there's a lot more speculation this week than there are in, most other weeks where we're at a golf course where we have a lot of data and a lot of recent results and tournament history to look at. Here, I think there's a lot more speculation, right? So I'm going to lean toward playing lower-owned players, more so fading the chalk, but also have to play players that fit our model well and that we like. So that's why we sort of came down to a pared-down player pool this week, sort of fading some of those chalk guys that normally maybe would have made the player pool, but this week we're being a little more stringent on those chalk guys and the criteria for them to make the cut. And then, not as many lower-owned plays that were statting out well enough in our model to mention as well. So we have, let's see here, we have 2 top-shelf plays, we have 11 mid-shelf plays, and we have 5 SCHWAG bag plays. So only 18 plays this week. We're going to have to get really creative with our roster construction, but it should leave us very unique. And, hey, the model's still spitting these guys out as guys that have a solid chance at success this week. So let's get after it. Let me respark this, get one more sip of water, and we're off and running with the top shelf. Shit's delicious. The first top shelf play. Top shelf plays again, $10,000 or more in DraftKings salary. It's Mr. Jordan Spieth, $10,700 price tag, 19.3% projected ownership. Of course, Spieth, from the area, right, comes from the Dallas, Texas area. So should be very familiar with the surfaces, both green and otherwise, right, the fairway surfaces here at TPC Craig Ranch. Should feel very much at home, and the man's been absolutely on fire. The 19.3% projected ownership, he is one of the higher owned projected owned plays that I'll suggest this week, but the model for him is just crushing it too much. Spieth coming in first in the custom model, first on approach, second on par 5s, fifth on the par 3 range, fourth in the par 4 range, and 18th in putting. It's spectacular. Nothing bad to say here. The recent form has been unbelievable. We're in Texas. The course is sort of an unknown, but for me, seems like a decent enough fit. So yeah, fire up Jordan Spieth. This is where I'd start my lineups. I mean, obviously Bryson and Jon Rahm, phenomenal players in their own right. You can roster them any week you want to, right? They are elite players on tour. But man, it's all lining up for Spieth this week. So I will fade Rahm and Bryson. I'll skip them this week. I'll go straight to Spieth at $10,700 to start most of my lineups. 19.3% projected ownership. The other top shelf play this week. It's been a while since we've got to mention this man's name. Mr. Daniel Berger, one of the favorites of the podcast. 15.1% projected ownership. Berger looking like an absolute smash of a play as well. Coming in 7th in the custom model, 10th on approach, 22nd in the par 5 range. I'm sorry, in par 5 scoring, strokes gained on par 5s. 35th in the par 3 range, 48th in the par 4 range, and 39th in strokes gained putting. I feel like anywhere that Spieth's going to play well, I feel a corollary to Daniel Berger is warranted, or at the very least could be justified. Not only that, but Berger's been playing really good golf lately, aside from the Masters, and we know that Augusta can jump up and get anyone. As I say, that's why we love Augusta, right? It's sneaky like that. But for this week, Berger looking like a great play. He is my winner this week. I was going to go with Spieth, felt like a little too much of a chalk monkey to take Jordan Spieth, so I'll pivot to my second favorite play of the week as my winner, Mr. Daniel Berger, $10,100 price tag, 15.1% projected ownership is totally fair, so I'll be rostering myself plenty of Berger this week, and yes, I will find some ways to start a couple of lineups, Berger and Spieth. We're going to have to get real cheeky down in the SCHWAG bag plays to do that, but it's certainly possible. All right, and that does it for the top shelf plays. We're on to the mid shelf plays, which are $7,500 or more in DraftKings salary. We have 11 of these mid shelf plays, so of our 18 plays, 11 of them coming out of the mid shelf. We're mid shelf heavy this week. It's looking like balanced builds are going to be somewhat popular, like a hybrid balanced build, where maybe you're grabbing one of these guys up top and then jumping straight down into like the 8K range. But yeah, the mid shelf looking pretty strong, particularly when you're above the 9Ks. So let's spark it up and get into our mid shelf plays. This stuff gives me the munchies. It's rare. Like, not many strains give me the munchies. Like, usually it actually has an opposite effect on me at this point in my life. At 28 years old, usually smoking, like, sort of makes me not hungry. This stuff, though, if I ever need to up the weight, I need to stick to the Doc OG from Cali Gas Pack. The first mid-shelf play, he's back. And I have no clue what the knee is really going to look like, but it seems like he's healthy enough, and he's teeing it up this week. It's Brooks Koepka, $9,900 price tag, 11.3% projected ownership. I was worried about Koepka at the Masters, even though he statted out phenomenally. Just seeing the lengths he was going to even like attempt to read the greens while like standing up, bending over, doing all this crazy stuff. it just didn't seem very sustainable, especially at a tournament as difficult as the Masters and a golf course as difficult as Augusta. But this week, coming into the AT&T Byron Nelson, especially with the PGA Championship on tap in a couple of weeks, I just can't imagine that Koepka would come in at anything, less than relatively 100%, right? Like, he has to feel, I imagine, supremely confident in his health to play this event ahead of the PGA Championship. And if that's the case, then I'm going to trust the man. He's an absolute stud. Coming in second in the custom model, 6th on approach, 5th on par 5s, 85th in the par 3 range, 22nd in the par 4 range, and 8th in strokes gained putting. Like, if Koepka had played the last couple events, if we didn't have this injury risk, not only would he be $500-600 more expensive, but he'd also be twice the ownership projection. So if you're willing to take a chance on Brooks and you think that there's a possibility, like I do, that Brooks is coming into this event fairly healthy, because otherwise he would have skipped it, especially with the PGA Championship so close, then I really like Koepka as a play. I mean, man, gives you as much win equity as anybody else in this field, and you're getting such a price and ownership discount due to the concern around the injury or that unknown. So hopefully the knee comes in, feeling okay, and Brooks balls out for us, because I'll be owning plenty of Brooks at that $9,900 price tag and 11.3% projected ownership. The next player is going to be tough for me to make decisions on, because you guys know how much I love Scottie Scheffler. $9,400 price tag, 20.1% projected ownership. Like Spieth, Scheffler from the Dallas area, should be feeling right at home. Went to the University of Texas. A lot of similarities to Spieth in that respect. Hasn't been playing as well as Spieth has been lately, but still playing very, very well in his own right. Coming in 9th in the custom model, 20th on approach, 12th in par 5 scoring, 72nd in the par 3 range, 41st in that par 4 range, and 88th with the putter. It's just at 20.1% projected ownership and a $9,400 price tag. I mean, man, it's such a tempting fade. Scheffler's still an inconsistent player, right? A young player on tour that has all the talent in the world, but still an inconsistent player. Feels like he's getting a big bump because he's from the area, which, okay, I can buy that, but I don't know. Something feels a little weird about it. I love the guy so much that I'll still play him anyway. I just think he's one of the next great players on the PGA Tour. But if I have to be honest, I could not fault you for going ahead and fading Scottie Scheffler, finding the extra $500, getting up to a guy like Brooks Koepka at half his projected ownership. So Scheffler going to be a tough decision point this week for me at $9,400, 20.1% projected ownership. Coming off his win at the Valspar, took the week off last week, Mr. Sam Burns, $9,300 price tag, 12.5% projected ownership. And coming off the win, probably why we're getting an ownership discount on Burns here. We'll have to see sort of where the mental is at after that victory. But, I mean, if Burns is coming for more here, he's obviously been playing well, coming in great form off the victory. Hits the ball so long and straight off the tee. It's going to be a huge advantage here. The game seems like a great fit. The irons have been hot lately. The putter's been even hotter. I'm going to ride the good form. I mean, 12.5% projected ownership, getting almost half the projected ownership of Scheffler and cheaper than Scheffler. And Burns has shown that he can win. So Sam Burns, looking solid, $9,300 price tag, 12.5% projected ownership. Only reason you're not playing him is if you're one of these people that, he just won, so I don't really want to play him. Which, I mean, that is true for some golfers. I think some golfers put it in neutral after getting a victory. Sort of want to celebrate that. So it's not. I'm not making fun of that viewpoint, because I think that it does happen to some folks. But in this spot, if you're playing 5 lineups, you take one crack at Burns, and you've got almost 2x leverage on the field. It feels like Burns is under-owned in this spot at that $9,300 price tag. The next mid-shelf play is Ryan Palmer, $9,100 price tag, 16% projected ownership. Palmer coming in 6th in the custom model, 45th on approach, which I don't love. And Palmer actually presents some more upside than that. He can flash with the irons, but everything else is stellar. Coming in 12th in strokes gained on par 5s, 26th in that par 3 range, 200 to 225 yards, 13th in the par 4 range, 450 to 500 yards, and 22nd in strokes gained putting. Yep, it just looks like a solid play. He's going to be one of the maybe chalkier plays here, along with Scheffler, and another guy we'll get to just under 9K, but everything's looking good for Palmer, especially if he can present us more upside with those irons. You're going to have to excuse me, I need to blow my nose. It's allergy season, folks. I'm telling you. Even with the allergy medicine. Oh, man. I wonder how that sounds in the audio. Got to keep the show authentic so you guys can hear me blowing my nose. It's got to be candid. All right, so after Mr. Ryan Palmer, if you want to take a shot at someone a little bit more, get a little different, Sergio Garcia, $9,000 price tag, 7.9% projected ownership. Just so good with the irons and so bad with the putter. That's what it comes down to. 5th in strokes gained approach over the last 12 measured rounds in this field, 144th in strokes gained putting. So, if Sergio can putt this week, you're going to be laughing your way to the bank. But he has not been able to putt well in quite some time. So, good luck with that. After Sergio, man, shit keeps going out. Hold on, folks. After Sergio is the guy I mentioned who's carrying a lot of ownership down here. It's Siwoo Kim, $8,800 price tag, 17.1% projected ownership. Siwoo probably a little bit underpriced in this spot for how well he's been playing lately. Coming in 18th in the custom model, 8th on approach, 75th on par 5s, 124th in the par 3s, 19th in the par 4 range, and 51st in strokes gained putting. Siwoo been churning out, solid finishes this year. Presents all the upside in the world, right? Could win pretty much anywhere, to be honest with you, because if Siwoo brings his A game, he is something else. So, Siwoo Kim, $8,800, 17.1% projected ownership. I don't love, but given his upside and the price tag, I'll be rostering some of him this week. There's like a theme this week. I sort of give you like the chalky play in the pricing range and then like my pivot in that pricing range that's lower owned. The pivot to Siwoo Kim's Harris English, $8,700 price tag, 5.1% projected ownership. English hasn't been playing as well here in the really recent past. But over the last 6 months, he's been playing some really, really good golf. Coming in 17th in the custom model, 60th on approach, 14th on the par 5s, 90th in the par 3 range, 8th in the par 4 range, and 48th in strokes gained putting. And English presents more upside than that 60th in strokes gained approach. As I mentioned, here in the very recent past, he has not been as good as he was, in the few months previous to that. But for 5.1% projected ownership, English statting out well enough that I will take a stab at him in one lineup at least at that $8,700 price tag. A guy who came through for us last week's been striking the ball really well, just can't putt, and sort of turned that around a bit last week. Luke List, $8,400 price tag, 12.1% projected ownership, coming in 4th in the custom model. 17th on approach, 4th in par 5s, no surprise there, he hits it long and straight off the tee. 97th in the par 3 range, 200 to 225 yards, but 16th in the par 4 range, 450 to 500 yards, and still, putrid 115th in strokes gained putting. in this field over the last 12 measured rounds, even with the okay performance last week. So Luke List, he's going to have to get it done. He's going to have to get it done through the ball striking. He's going to have to score well on the par fives. We want to see him with tons of eagle opportunities this week if we're going to pay for him at this $8,400 price tag. 12.1% projected ownership's fine. And hopefully List cannot gouge tons of strokes on the greens for back-to-back weeks here. At $8,100, I like Charles Schwartzel, 10% projected ownership. Schwartzel coming in 14th in the custom model, really good on approach, 11th on approach in this field over the last 12 measured rounds. At an $8,100 price tag, that's a great thing to see. Coming in 49th in the par 5s, 30th in the par 3 range, 200 to 225 yards, 44th in that par 4 range, 450 to 500 yards, and 81st in strokes gained putting. Not obsessed with the play of Schwartzel. But he finds himself in a pretty unique pricing range where, I don't like anyone. The next player I like below him's at 7,700, and the player I like above him's at 8,400 in Luke List. So he finds himself in sort of a bit of a dead range where if I need to use someone in this range, it will be Charles Schwartzel, $8,100, 10% projected ownership. The player I like at $7,700 also is a low-owned, sort of more of a dart throw type of play. So this pricing range, really 7,500 all the way up to you get to Luke List at 8,400. I don't really like it at all. It's sort of dead to me, but if I have to go here, and you will have to go here, at $7,700, Russell Knox, 5.9% projected ownership. A super volatile play, so yeah, you're going to have to be ready to live with the results on this one. Coming in 3rd in the custom model, 7th on approach, 20th in the par 5s, 78th in par 3 range, 200 to 225 yards, 14th in that par 4 range, 450 to 500 yards, but 132nd with the putter. That's a big reason why he runs really volatile. If the ball striking is stellar, then he can sort of get away with the lackluster putting, but realistically, at this price tag at $7,700, you're going to need Knox to at least be, not 132nd in this field with the putter. He's going to need to show out with a better performance than that. But it's totally possible, right? Putting is a stat that can have a little bit of luck involved, right? Like the script can flip pretty quickly for guys, and guys can flash with solid putting performances seemingly out of nowhere. So Knox has the ball striking, certainly to warrant this price tag. Only 5.9% projected ownership. Let's see if old Russell can putt this week, huh? The one guy I did like in this pricing range, of course, everyone liked, because, it makes sense. He's statting out well, and he should be a good fit here. It's Doug Ghim, $7,500 price tag, 20.8% projected ownership, though. And we've been playing Ghim a lot recently. He's just been underpriced in a lot of spots on DraftKings. Coming in 22nd in the custom model, 4th on approach, 100th in strokes gained on the par 5s, which is at 20.8% projected ownership. One sort of red flag that we can move off of him. 29th in the par 3 range, 200 to 225 yards. 27th in that par 4 range, 450 to 500 yards. But 148th in strokes gained putting. So 2 red flags against him. 20.8% projected ownership at $7,500. Everything else is really good. And, the par 5 number and the putting number could certainly have some correlation, where if he flips the putting, he's scoring better on the par 5s because he's putting better. So Ghim, if he putts better this week, I think is going to crush this price tag. Should he be 20.8% owned or projected ownership? Feels high to me. Right now, I feel like I'm going to fade Doug Ghim, but I wanted to mention him for the podcast, obviously, because he is underpriced. He's statting out very well for a $7,500 price tag. And that's it for the mid-shelf. So we can get ready for the SCHWAG bag. 5 SCHWAG bag players this week, and I have one crazy bomb. You're going to have to be a psycho to take this guy, and I guess I'm psycho enough because I'm going to roster, at least a couple lineups with him in there. But other than the last SCHWAG bag play, some decent ownership going to the SCHWAG bag. As I mentioned, you're going to have to dabble down here if you're going to want to build some lineups with a lot of win equity. Like if I want to build those Spiethberger lineups, Bet your ass I'm going to have to dabble down into the swag bag. So let me spark this thing up and let's get into it, y'all. The first swag bag play. And I really like him this week. I hope that the course is playing hard and fast enough that his lack of distance off the tee won't matter. It's Brandt Snedeker. Sneds, $7,400 price tag, 7.2% projected ownership. The dude's been playing great golf lately. Coming in 19th in the custom model, 16th on approach, 28th in the par 5s, 1st in that par 3 range, 75th in the par 4 range, and 14th with the putter. I mean, for a $7,400 price tag and 7.2% projected ownership, I'll be owning plenty of Brandt Snedeker this week. I certainly prefer paying the $200 more to Snedeker than I do to taking Jonathan Vegas, who's at a $7,200 price tag, but 13.6% projected ownership. Vegas, just a lukewarm play for me this week. Coming in 20th in the custom model, 39th on approach, 17th in the par 5s, 112th in the par 3 range, 34th in that par 4 range, and 104th with the putter. So you're going to need Vegas to putt well. And not only that, you're probably going to need him to outperform his pretty awful performance on this par 3 range here. Could certainly get him into some trouble as well. So a couple of obstacles that Vegas has to clear. But aside from that, looks like a solid play. So if Vegas can get over his par 3 demons and also roll the flat stick a little bit better, I can understand why people are going to him. Again, I prefer finding the $200 more to get to Brandt Snedeker, but if you can't and you're stuck at $7,200, at least you got Jonathan Vegas there waiting for you. Or if you wanted to leave some money on the table, leave some of that $50,000 salary on the table, you could skip Vegas. You go to Mr. Tom Lewis, $7,000 price tag, 10.4% projected ownership. Lewis, a guy that just continues to pop up as a play on the podcast. Coming in 21st in the custom model, 38th on approach, 3rd on the par 5s, 26th in that par 3 range, 200 to 225 yards, 69th in the par 4 range, 450 to 500 yards, nice, and 63rd in strokes gained putting. Just, very lukewarm play here. I don't think he gives you a bunch of upside, but feels like, if you're just trying to take a guy to make a cut at $7,000 or less, Tom Lewis would be one of the first names I would select. But doesn't carry a ton of upside, in my opinion, in this event. So I'm not over the moon on Tom Lewis, maybe more of a cash game style play. For tournaments, I'd probably look to the last player that I have here in the swag bag, but you can look to Tom Lewis if you want a little bit of made cut equity down in this pricing range, $7,000 and 10.4% projected ownership. Now we're under $7,000 with Mr. Roger Sloan. $6,900 price tag, 7.1% projected ownership. Sort of surprised me. A little higher than I would have anticipated. But, he's shown the ability to, flash some upside in decent fields as well. I believe it was at the Honda where he had his... Yeah, came 25th at the Honda, which solid field at the Honda this year. His other finishes really in sort of weaker or alternative fields. Corrales, Punta Cana. The RSM actually came 23rd. That was last year, so not going to glean too much from that. But Sloan at least can flash some upside. So at a $6,900 price tag, you really do only need like a top 25, top 20 finish, and you're happy with that, assuming that the guys you paid up for did their jobs as well. So Roger Sloan, I don't love the 7.1% projected ownership, and I, again, would rather go to this last guy in my swag bag, which is crazy. It's probably going to burn me. I'm interested to see how many of you play this guy. But Sloan looking at least like a solid play at $6,900, 7.1% projected ownership. My guy this week has missed 4 of the last 5 cuts. Well, actually, he didn't miss the cut last week. He withdrew before he could miss the cut. Yeah, I mentioned him last week on the pod. I said he's a withdrawal risk. He always is with a bad back. Not just like, Louis Oosthuizen. It's Danny Lee. $6,700 price tag. 2.3% projected ownership. I got spark up for Mr. Lee. And look, his projected ownership says 2.3%. I would bet the under on that ownership number. I think right now, people are still clicking him into their lineups, but when it actually comes time for the rubber to meet the road, I don't see many people playing Danny Lee. Wouldn't be surprised if that ownership number came in under 1%. Lee coming in at 24th in the custom model, 29th on approach, 48th in the par 5s, 19th in that par 3 range, 55th in the par 4 range, and 86th with the putter. I mean, Danny Lee is a guy that presents upside, a guy that can certainly top 20, or he could withdraw. So understand that he comes with a ton of risk, as I mentioned last week. Always a withdrawal risk. But I mean, hey, if we're gonna get him at 2.3% is the projected ownership, I'd be cool with that. I think we're getting him sub 1%. If we can do that, let's get a week Danny Lee. Let the back feel right. We're gonna be in the warmth of Texas. Should be feeling, loose, ready to roll. Yeah. Fire up some damn Danny Lee. Fire up some damn Danny Lee. Because I'm a psycho. And that does it for the Swag Bag Plays. And that does it for the HTG podcast for the 2021 AT&T Byron Nelson. Guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell if you're watching on YouTube. If you are watching on your favorite podcasting platform, I appreciate you, and I hope you've subscribed to the channel on Spotify, Apple Music, Stitcher, whatever the case may be. Drop in the comments who your winner for the AT&T Byron Nelson Classic is, and what you will be smoking as you watch the event. Remember, guys, mark off May 23rd, Sunday of the PGA Championship at Kiowa on your calendars. We're going to do a broadcast, HTG pod style. I love you guys. I cannot wait for this PGA Championship. Peace.